Independence Day, 1911. It's a gloriously festive evening. The whole town of Windber, Pennsylvania has congregated on the vast manicured lawns of the Grand Midway Hotel. The local ragtime band is playing a steady stream of Irving Berlin classics, while children dart between their parents' legs playing tag and hide and seek. The heavy, heady aroma of buttery popcorn and peanut brittle fill the evening air. There is a jubilant buzz beginning to spread through the crowd as the night draws closer. Soon, the velvet sky will be alight with glittery showers of silver and gold sparkles. As the first round of fireworks bolt into the sky, the crowd cheers. Children stand with their little heads tilted towards the heavens as fire and light rocket through the sky. The crowd is in awe of the beauty, the explosions dazzling the town. Everything looks so beautiful in this warm yellow glow. The sparkly, fiery fairy dust gently dissipating into the starscape. It's a perfect moment of patriotism and Americana glory. As the grand finale of the fireworks show begins, illuminations soar into the now smoky sky. The town waits with great anticipation to be enveloped in glisteringly sparkly light. No one had expected that the booms of the rockets would be followed by showers of blood and earth-shattering screams. The townspeople's once white linen clothes were now adorned with boiling gore that had fallen from the sapphire sky. Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. There is a 33-room hotel located in the historic town of Windber, Pennsylvania, that is truly one of a kind. It has a bar and guest rooms and a gift shop, much like other hotels. But it is also home to the world's largest Ouija board, largest tarot card, a seance parlor, secret back staircase, and themed rooms like the Vampire, Mermaid, Beatnik, and Frankenstein suite. This hotel is a lot more than just a place to lay your head at night. In fact, very little sleeping at all happens in this establishment. The Grand Midway Hotel calls itself America's Bohemian Palace. And it's a fitting description for this hotel cum museum. This once dilapidated building has been transformed into a creative and eclectic space perfect for artists and ghosts alike. I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is The West London Witch. Episode 22, The Grand Midway Hotel.
Okay, well, we didn't know anything about it. We bought the building on eBay for $11,000. And we relocated here a week later, and then we kind of learned the history.
This is Blair Murphy, the now owner of the Grand Midway Hotel. He's an artist and a filmmaker who had a successful career in Los Angeles working for Stan Lee at Marvel Films and as a cameraman for Prince. But after feeling the inevitable drain of the city, he and his best friend Damien, a musician from New Orleans, decided it was time for a mental palate cleanser and a new adventure.
I was in the film industry in California, and Damien Youth, he's a musician in New Orleans. He had kind of burned out for a little bit in the scene there, and I had burned out in Los Angeles for a bit. We just decided we wanted to take a break and move anywhere. And so we were combing weird sites for a location. We just wanted something huge, and it didn't matter how cheap or beat up it was. So we were looking at like high schools with asbestos and caves and bowling alleys and just all kinds of wacky properties that we just were going to do an experiment for 1 year. And really, it genuinely did not matter what state we ended up in. We were going to do the same thing no matter what. And then Damien's wife called me, and she had found this hotel on sale that was going to be torn down, and it almost seemed not real. Like it has like a ballroom and a bar, and it's 32 rooms, and it sits on a park, so it has this huge front yard. People were saying that couldn't be real, and so we relocated to it. But we didn't really care about it at all, any more than any other property. It wasn't until after we got here that we kind of became fascinated with the history, and we had no idea about any of the ghost stuff. That all came much later.
This might sound absolutely insane. Just pick up your life, move to a site unseen, no job or community in place. But I actually really understand this. In fact, it's how I ended up in London. I too was over Los Angeles and needed a fresh start. I moved sight unseen with no job, no friends, a tiny budget, and 2 suitcases. There is no denying that Blair is an eccentric. But I understand and respect his adventurous spirit. However, it does feel rather kismet that he found his way to this particular building.
So what we discovered was it's a coal mining town. We didn't know anything going into it. And there was a ring of buildings around the late 1890s that was the company built, the Berwyn company. Berwyn is Winber flipped. So the town of Winber was created by the Berwyn family. It was a company town, so everyone was paid in company money. This was pre-labor laws. I think it's 14 miles of tunnels underground here that are coal mines, and everybody would. The conditions were just really rough from what I understand. And our building was right in the center of this whole sort of manipulation where they would trick immigrants to come over here, and then you'd get indebted instantly. This building was a brothel originally, and so it was like a way station where people would come here, and then they'd move them into apartments and houses throughout the community. That's the original part of the building, and then it got an upgrading class later on when the Timko family bought it. They were a jazz family, and they owned it for decades, and they were jazz musicians. And then around the mid '70s, the building has a bar, and it closed down, and the building became just a private home. And then eventually it was sitting empty, and there's a lot of old buildings in this town that are starting because a lot of the coal mining industry is closed down. Some of these buildings are now just sitting empty, and so in the winters, the upkeep is difficult, and the pipes freeze, and people break in them, and so they're actually gone for pretty cheap. And so then we bought it. We were a family of artists too, and the Timko family started joining us at our parties, and we learned an awful lot of history from them.
Blair, Damien's wife, and their new baby were rather naive when they made this impromptu move to Pennsylvania. The Midway is massive, expensive to heat and run. The pipes froze, and the tiny troop's electricity was routinely being shut off due to lack of payment. Damien's family only lasted a year, but in that time, the house became a cross between an artist's refuge and a scene out of Animal House. They hosted huge parties, and interesting, fascinating people from the arts would all congregate in this bohemian wonderland.
It felt like the building found us, that it was going to get torn down, and it said, I need to get some out-of-the-box thinkers from far away to come here and rescue me. And suddenly we were living here and slowly upgrading it. So after we arrived, people started telling us ghost stories. One aspect was nobody wanted that place because it's considered so haunted. And a lot of people said that in the area. And so when we moved in, it was just a big empty building, and the decor was, we had like an air mattress on the floor and a lamp in every room, and that was it. And we slowly started to kind of unfold our own tastes into the different rooms, and which became themes, and that just continued building. In the beginning, basically, like we have a mermaid room, and it just was like we had 32 empty rooms, and someone put a photo of a mermaid on the wall, and that became called the mermaid room. And then over the years, people would add more stuff to that room with that theme, and now they're full on, like, I mean, it's not as cool as Disney World, but each room's theme has been really fleshed out.
Each room at the Midway transports you to another world. For example, the Vampire Suite is a deep crimson red room full of coffins, taxidermied bats, skulls, and vampire books and movies. It's a gothic paradise that any Anne Rice or Bram Stoker fan would feel at home in. The decor in the hotel was not random or spooky just for spooky's sake, but rather it was inspired by the experiences Blair and Damien encountered and by the legends connected to the hotel.
Okay, well, I remember in the early days, a TV turned on a couple times, and but we had bad electrical in the beginning, and so there's a lot of stuff that was kind of questionable, but the timing made things uncanny. Like you'd open a door and a TV would turn on, that kind of thing, and it all just sounded kind of nuts too, to talk about it, and it was more like the community started giving us hints of stories. One thing that they kept saying was some horrible death happened there, horrible death that everyone's grandparents witnessed in the entire community. But that's all they could tell us, that nobody really remembered the details or a name or a date. And so that dangled out in front of us for like a year until finally someone from the Sawinski family in town came to us with the photo of their great aunt Martha, who then we had a name and a date, 4th of July, 1911, where this 19-year-old girl was on a porch. The article says, we used to have porches on the second, third floor. She was standing on the porch watching fireworks going on in the park out front. And the article says there were 10,000 people out there. And the firemen were right down in there in the crowd with the dropping rockets into pipes. And one of the pipes exploded on the ground instead of shooting up in the air. And shrapnel went everywhere, and a frisbee of iron shot over everyone's head and clocked this 19-year-old girl, Martha Sawinski, who used to work at our building, right in the throat, and she died screaming over the entire community. And so that was the story that everybody said there was something happened there, but we can't remember the details. And so Martha's not just a death here, but we believe she's a ghost here.
If it wasn't for the locals and the relationships Blair had created within the community, he may have never known about the confirmed deaths on the property. And he wasn't just being told about people who died on the site, but also about bodies that are not just buried on the property, but actually inside of it.
There's confirmed one body in the basement. There's potentially a second body in the basement. The family that sold us the building, and again, a lot of these stories went way back, and so they're we took time to track down newspaper articles and all that. And so the family that sold us the place said at one point they'd been partying with us and coming to our events for almost a year, and they finally said, should we tell them now? And our basement is like a dungeon down there. It's a dirt floor, and there's a couple strange slabs of cement down there that play no role in support for anything, or washing machines, nothing on. They're just these unusual slabs. And they said that they said, well, back in the day, people would bury family members on farms. And we were like, yeah. And they said, well, somebody related to the hotel buried a child in the basement. And it goes way back. We don't know all the details, but there was something like somebody was dropped, something like that. And I'm pretty sure it's a little girl, I think around age 4. These are not details they told me. These are just details from consistency of investigations over 20 years now, where more so it seems like a female, and I would say around age 4-ish. So they said, yeah, the person's buried in the basement, and we think it's under one of the cement slabs. And so then Chip Coffey, who was the host of a show called Psychic Kids, where they try to cultivate psychic powers in children, he came out here, and he went down in the basement. He was vibing out there for a while, and he confirmed his opinion was, yes, there's absolutely a child buried down here. But then he said, give me a couple more minutes. And about 10 minutes later, he said, I really think there's a second body down here in the basement that no one knows about. And then he went on to discuss what his theory was. That he said that he thought that long ago, a prostitute was killed back when it was a brothel. It was an accident. She wasn't supposed to die. People freaked out. They buried her in the basement, and she's been down there. It's like there's nobody even alive now to know that story, but she's still down there. So that's like floating around. I filed that away. I didn't put that online immediately. And then we have a room on the second floor. It's our creepiest room, called the canopy room. And recently, I think this was in the fall, there were 3 teams here. And that room has like a very negative female energy. And guys just don't, women don't like it either, but guys really don't like that room. People get headaches and get nauseous in there. And you can stay in the room. Put it out there for rent, but I always tell people, you're not going to stay the night in that room. You're going to go across the hall before morning, and 8 out of 10 people I find across the hall in the morning. So these 3 teams were in there one night, and I heard them all cheering, and I came down the hall and said, well, what did you guys stumble onto? And I think the name was Ruth, but they got 3 pieces of information. My name's Ruth. I'm the woman killed in this room, and I'm the woman buried in the basement. And I'd never linked the canopy room to the basement.
The canopy room is notorious for being the worst room in the house. Blair describes it as the coldest place for paranormal activity because it's so icy, and the presence of whatever is there is so tangible.
I really don't know the source of the canopy room, but it seems like something terrible went on in there. It just feels like, I remember one time a policeman was at a party we had, and he stepped in the room and something thumped him, he said, on the chest so hard, like, don't enter. And he got freaked out and left. He's like, I'm not going to stay at this party. I'm just leaving. And I heard that lots of times from men stepping in the room, that they feel like something right in the doorway is like, stop, don't come in. And a soldier just come back from the war, and he was freaking out about this room, saying, like, this room is terrible. Something. I don't even want to be in this room. And I said, you're telling me you watched your best friends get killed in the tank, and this empty room is bothering you that much? And he's like, yes, there's just something about this room. And I've heard that over and over and over again. And people come here for that. No one's coming to my place for a good night's sleep. They're coming here to have a terrible night. And they say that in the morning. They're thrilled about it. They're like, oh, it was awful. I loved it.
If a sex worker was killed in the canopy room and subsequently buried in the basement, it totally makes sense that she would be aggressive towards men in particular. Even Blair, who loves the Midway and the spirits who haunt it, has felt the negative effects of the canopy room.
I first have to say, I love this. I love it. And I was raised in a funeral home. My parents were funeral directors. So, like, I was raised around coffins and dead bodies my whole life. And I was taken to school in a hearse sometimes. And I remember my family doing makeup on bodies and me watching the embalmings and staring at the half cracked open eyelids of bodies, thinking if this eye moves even slightly, it's going to, even as a little kid, I'd think, like, this is going to change my paradigm of the whole world and it's going to creep me out. And then I watched longer. And so then this led me to going into horror films. So I like all that stuff. I really do. And some of these TV shows, actually, I think all of them, when they come to your home, the context is that they're coming to rescue you. And so that puts you in the position of you have to kind of portray yourself as asking for help. And that's just not a reality with me here. Like, I'm not asking for help with anyone. Actually, even with the teams that are coming in here now, this is kind of on a hobby level for me. I love this as a private home. I'm very comfortable living in this sort of mystical, uncertain environment where weird things happen, and that just feels like right on. That's completely normal for me. I'm happy with it. But I did one time got chased out of the building. It was a creepy night once where something went on in the canopy room, and it just got so strange that at the end of the night I was like, let's get out of here and go get a beer. And my girlfriend and I left the building for a couple of hours, and in the morning I woke up and the building was still like, it still had that over the top creepy vibe. And then around noon it just went, like, it just dissipated, and then it was not so bad anymore. But there was something one night we called it the Squidlana. I was in one room and the electricity had been shut off for the night. Back in the early days, we had bad electric and we weren't paying our bills, and so we were in the building with just me, one other person, and candles. And I remember my girlfriend at the time screaming somewhere in the building and running out of a room and racing and finding me in this completely dark 32-room building. And she had said that she was in the canopy room reading, and she thought she saw a woman in the doorway, and then the person, she used the word scuttled fast across the floor, like, and then suddenly was like right in front of her and grabbed her arm. And she said the thumbs stand out the most. That I was like, well, maybe it was a cat. She's like, no, this thing had thumbs. It was a person who scuttled across the floor and then grabbed my arm, and that's why I freaked out and ran out of the room. And the building was genuinely very creepy that night. If I walked away from her, it was still very creepy. So creepy that I even said, let's just get out of here. And so that I did get chased out one time.
On top of the Midway itself being haunted, there are sometimes external factors that can add to the paranormal activity. Not only have long-term guests brought their own energy into the house, but Blair also collects haunted items from all over the globe. And as you travel up to the third floor, the energy and the activity shifts.
The canopy room was on the second floor, and that's definitely the hottest spot for activity in the building. But on the third floor, a lot of people mentioned seeing black wisps floating around. They were here just last night. I believe they got a recording of that video. I remember one time waking up. I used to have this big dog, big Alaskan Malamute, and it was around, I don't know, sometime after midnight. And my dog was bolt awake, staring in the corner of the room, and I looked over, and it looked like a tornado of like gray sheets just swirling around. And I was thinking, like, oh my God, I'm really looking at some kind of phenomena right now. And I wasn't sure how to react with it. I just stared at it for about 10 minutes, and then I went back to sleep. It's been interesting the way we have cats and dogs and watching them react to stuff, because they're not faking anything. They're not making anything up. I know all this sounds wacky. My mom's always like, don't talk that way. People, you sound like a crazy person. But I genuinely think something's going on in this building. So the third floor used to have a room where a painter lived who was on a lot of meds, and he would paint these floor-to-ceiling murals. He would say, I'm just painting what I see. And he had about 15 of them or so. And that area of the building was really humming, is the way I would describe the energy. And then eventually a local conservative church in the area, he joined this church, and they came in the building and they carried all his murals out and they burnt them all, like the whole pile. And they were all sort of demonic looking paintings. And then he moved away. And so he was only here for a couple of years.
One day, while waiting in line at Starbucks, a woman was chatting with Blair and said that she read energies. Blair told her to come to the Midway and see what she thought of the place.
I took her over here immediately. I didn't want her to go find me on the internet and read stuff. And so she was walking through the building, and she was getting some stories. She was nailing some stuff. I was pretty impressed with her. And when she got to that room, this back section of the third floor, she said, this part here is being misinterpreted. These rooms are not haunted. The person is haunted. And wherever he went, this kind of, she said, it's not demonic, but it's like a phantom. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. This is her voice, her words. She said, whatever was haunting this person went with him, and it's now haunting him in a new location. And that feels like it rings true to me as one way to describe what went on in the third floor.
The Midway can be a really confusing place for psychics. There are the ghosts that are grounded to the location, but there are also ghosts and residual energy connected to the items that Blair has brought into the hotel that have nothing to do with the original structure.
Sometimes psychics have said, like, I'm not sure, I'm being bombarded. I don't even know what I'm reading. Is it the typewriter here? Is it that vase? Is it the mirror? Is it the nun? Is it the doll? Is it the bed? And so I sort of piled things on top of things in that room.
As confusing as the Midway's energies can be sometimes to navigate, there is always one spirit who is clear, strong, and consistent. And that's Martha. She's the hotel's most famous ghost, and Blair has considered her a metaphorical roommate for 20 years. He describes her as chill, and he believes she's happy at the Midway.
Martha, the woman who was killed with fireworks, one month, this was, I think back in the fall, quite a few people were concentrating on trying to contact her and speak with her. And this group made me do an interview. It was kind of fun. They brought out these divining rods that you hold in your hands, and they just spin back and forth for yes or no. And so I was standing next to her poster, and they basically interviewed her, and I just held the rods and chimed in sometimes here and there. And so I knew they weren't cheating with these because I was the one holding them. And so they would cross for yes or no. And it was very warm and charming. And I was talking very fondly of her, like, oh, I love her. This is a person I've lived with for 20 years. And so I went to bed, and I had this Martha dream where it was like an early silent film lot, like after a silent film was over, and they had this boat that was suspended by like a big hinge. So like you could sit on the boat, and it would rock a little bit. It was just like this boat parked off in the shade, and Martha had me sit on the boat, and the dream was like a grainy black and white movie, silent movie. And so I was sitting on this boat in the shade, and I remember thinking that it was so peaceful and romantic because it had come from some romantic movie that I remember thinking I could sit here all day or all month or for all time. And then in the dream, it was like Martha was like showing me this is what it's like for me to be a ghost, that I'm just sort of suspended in this pleasant place that I could stay in for all time. And that was the whole dream. I don't know if she planted it or if my own imagination just created it, but that was a very endearing, nice tap for the night. I guess I'll word it that way.
Whether the dreams or the paranormal activity connected to Martha is just a figment of one's imagination or a real manifestation, Martha herself was a real person, and she did suffer a tragic death on the porch of the Midway. It's only natural that Blair would want to find out more about the woman who he's sharing his home with.
And one time I used to call psychics, and I'd hold photographs, and I'd say, I'm holding a photo of a person. All I'm going to tell you is that her name starts with an M. Tell me about this person. And then and I would write down and try to archive what people would say. And this one woman I spoke with, she started speaking as Martha, like in the first person. And she said, I didn't experience the death you all think I did, that I was knocked out of my body so fast that I kind of watched it from 6 feet away the way everyone else did. And can't confirm that, but it felt like it rang true. Like she didn't, it was horrific in a different sort of way, not the way that we're all assuming that it was for her.
Blair describes Martha as neutral, and this is substantiated by the EVP sessions and spirit box works that paranormal investigators have done. She always says, hello, I'm here, but she doesn't seem traumatized by her death or like she's working out something on the other side, but rather that she's just existing in that lovely silent film place of the Midway. Blair, do you think that you have created the perfect ecosystem for the supernatural and the paranormal to flourish and thrive?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm in a really good environment for that. And I'm very happy with that. Like, I'm not trying to chase anything out of here. I feel like the building is happy with what I'm doing with it. It was, this was about to be torn down. And now it's got world records. It's on national television. And so I don't think all these ideas are mine. I think the building is sort of making it happen, and I'm just assisting. But I feel like anything conscious is floating around here is happy with me, and that I'm doing a good job at it. I really think that something very balanced is going on here, even though the stories sound kind of crazy. And I imagine there's demonologists that think like, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just inviting trouble. But I don't worry about any of that. I don't worry about any of it. Just to be official on the record, I think when you're right with God, you don't have to worry about anything. And I don't.
For 15 years, the Grand Midway was a private residence. You could only stay if Blair invited you. However, as the building gained infamy among different artists and the paranormal community, Blair began to open up his home to others who wanted to stay the night. And you too can stay. As Blair himself said, no one comes for a good night's sleep, but the experience is truly something to behold. I find it ironic that the hotel is called the Grand Midway. It's almost as though this building is a middle ground for the living and the dead. And thanks to Blair, its legacy will continue to frighten and fascinate for many, many years to come. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.